I thank you for your support and following along with these projects that I've initiated the last few months. I definitely have shifted gears from traditional, casting, welding, sculptor, and building earth buildings in my backyard to actually getting into design development. Certainly dealing with computational art, parametric design, and the main medium is Grasshopper for Rhino 3D. Uh, my initial Facebook site, Michael Wickerson, is just out there inspired by all the videos and the links of things that I chase and follow and try and learn from constantly. I do a lot of online courses. I have a incredible interest in where working digitally will take my work in the next decade. So that's where I've kind of begun. And so I thank the people that have followed. I've grabbed a bunch of friends, not only posting on Facebook, but certainly on my private website, Wickerson Studios and michaelwickerson.com. But Facebook's been the tool, along with LinkedIn, that I was able to build a private group about a month and a half ago. And I went in and I decided to visit the GH Python script node in an effort to go beyond Grasshopper. My life for the last couple of years has been a rotation of Rhino, Grasshopper, Python, and trying to learn from so many, which I can list all of those people and all the different angles that I've come from to try and learn those things. But this site really showed me something very interesting, and that was that there was over 1,000 developers that jumped right on board with this kind of call to visit Python script, usually Rhino script, start to break that down, do some Rhino common namespaces, and decipher base scripts that start in point, vector, line, surfaces, shells, meshes, and so on. And it slowly moves into what I would consider very algorithmic art, computational art. The end game, really, in 2020 for me is to be introduced and develop not only through Grasshopper Rhino, but into Rhino Inside, into Revit, taking a look at Dynamo, realizing there's a possibility of generative and optimization techniques to be used in all of those traditional CAD scripts that I was interested in making. So going back the last 2 years, I think if I really start to develop these things, it's going to be pretty incredible. What I've ended up doing from this site is I've started to meet people online, Discord private accounts with members here. I've thanked all the members. I think it's an incredibly positive private group that's growing. I encourage you to pass it around and find people that are serious about it. And of course, the world's become this meetup Zoom place that I look forward to weekly as to who I'm going to contact and meet with. And my real goal in life is to bring this to the sculpture department at the Kansas City Art Institute and find a realm for parametric, computational, generative, whatever words you want to use. And I actually, not being able to run my elective, stepping into an administrative position, I'm offering Sunday classes, which is what I've started to post, and I'm finding I'm teaching live, secondary to actually having an online presence that runs the exact same classes. Programming and Python appeals to me very much because as a first language, many of the people on these sites, the first language is not English, and I am impressed that most cultures make the attempt to learn English along with their own number one language, with coding being second to that. But I don't find myself or North America so much. The people I'm around struggle to meet up with another language. So this site really was generated by finding a Chinese text and saying, let's translate it, not the Chinese text around it, but let's use the Python code to revisit it and try and be creative with it. My sole purpose is to research, develop on my own, and be creative, slightly conservative in what I've traditionally done creatively in analog, but digitally I have to make things so they're actually understandable, they're applicable, they're usable. What I ended up doing very recently in October is I've started to found a small group that I can work one-on-one with, that I can get in and have private meetings with, and I certainly can have some support that I really am listening to these individuals and what I'm providing them beyond the tutorial videos, which aren't so much tutorials, they're really just things in a nutshell and kind of the angles I come at things. I keep the videos fairly short, but what I've done here is started to generate some longer tutorial videos of half an hour in length, and I'm providing all of the GH files and 3DM files that I used to provide for free on GitHub to anyone. I'm being fairly specific that these members can work alongside me and get access to those sites. So Patreon's starting to become a very focused group that came from that Facebook private group, which came from that initial just Facebook presence or LinkedIn presence that I had. And what I've done is there's certain things in here as we go through, like the Grasshopper for Rhino ABCs 123s, which is a playlist on Facebook, on my YouTube account. All those scripts are available here. And that would be very similar to going through here, and they just continue. There's quite a list of them that I'm visiting, all the params, the maths, the sets, the curves, the surfaces, and I kind of stopped at mesh at that point, just activating every node so you're not stuck generating from scratch GH files. You can just pull them and pop them up on your desktop. And of course, that extends to quite a few other private sites at this point. As we get into the repositories, you see I have 22 other repositories that deal with the 1001 scripts that I began, and how that deviated into looking at the GH Python scripts, a few smaller projects, creative projects that I did that run through that. And of course, all of those things in there. Some of them, if they're not mine, they're very private because I don't want to give up intellectual property of Arturo Tedeschi and things like that. But there are some interesting things there. And once I get into the GH Python, the Patreon group, I don't mind starting to share my own creative files with them so we can get right down to the nut and the discussion. So that's the one that's there for the real beginner. And what I'm doing currently is I am running that. This is the list of the ABCs 1, 2, 3s of Rhino, which I send out to anyone everywhere that's interested. It's been helpful in allowing me to meet up with individuals in the world that have an interest in Grasshopper and Rhino. I just have to keep shifting my face. But those are definitely online. They're free. The GH files are the ones that pair with those GitHub files, and you can just kind of link them, play around, and get all the nodes up and activated. Now, of course, since I started that a few months ago, I shifted over to Rhino work in process, so the kind of in preparation for Rhino 7, and there's a few things that have changed. And certainly, Rhino Aside has brought a lot of the ribbon tools and tools from Revit into the Grasshopper window when I open it. So you'll see things go fairly quickly in my playlist and jump around. The other one I'm doing are these 4 short videos, which I'm looking forward to this Sunday, that I've taken my old digital electives of the human hand in digital sculpture and algorithmic modeling and computational studies and directed studies I do with seniors, that they can sit and watch pre-video, about 2 hours of videos, and then we have a 3.5-hour session of really getting people active into the Grasshopper window and really starting to work. And of course, all these people have done a little tutorial in Rhino first and worked with a peer and partner that I have at the school that's running those sessions, and then I follow up with Grasshopper. And I'm using some interesting scripts here from Lon Nguyen, who was a big influence when I started to look into programming in Python and the Rhino common namespaces, and finding that C# might be a language I want to learn. So instead of using the C# node over here, he's actually showing me how to build my first plugins. And of course, that's really at the cusp of what I understand as C#. So I'm not going there on many of the other sites. That's a real learning curve for me. The next thing I have here is a lot of questions and saying, will you, sorry about having to move my face around, but I was trying to be considerate of that. But I've just started again with this text that I go back into the most base opening of the GH Python node, which seems to be the real kernel of interest coming from the groups that I've started to get with, that I just pop up and just start playing right off the bat. And I just started that, and of course, after making one video, and it wasn't very long, I think 19 minutes or 11 minutes, 18 minutes, nope, 22 minutes. Basically, people are like, well, make more of those. We need more of those online. So I am doing those, but in the same breath, I am totally and utterly obsessed now because of where it can possibly go. And I thought I had it open here, but I'm going to jump over to here. Let me hit pause on that one. This is a video series that's coming out of Anton Savov, which is blowing me away. It's getting in and not going into Dynamo, not going into that generative studies, but I see for me the end game right now, and this is a small tutorial that's about 6 or 5 sessions that run between 20 and 30 minutes each, maybe a little longer, that show me that once I get this figured out, and some great use of data trees and really managing data well, it's the example of this 9-pillared Chrysler building with the one that's always tallest in the middle, or at least equally tall as another one in the middle. I feel in drawing that out into an algorithm, into Grasshopper, I can then apply it way back to my most early Grasshopper scripts dealing with geometries, landscapes, the cupola design that I fetishize and love about iron casting. So this is where I think if I can advance the mindset of the sculptors within our program beyond parametric to the computational, to basically be able to run an algorithm that optimizes their structures, we're now sketching in a digital modeling mode at the speed of light. I mean, in the sense of what the computer can do. And I'm asking students that coexist with so many devices and screens and Twittering and going through all of these Instagram accounts, why are they not coexisting and treating the computer like a cobot when it comes to generating their creative ideas? So I hope I can wrestle this and get a real hold of this. So after my grasshopper intro class I do with people that have already done Rhino, we can get into Revit a little bit and be more reasonable with our decisions, architecturally possibly, on any level that it's fabricatable. But then we go into this generative design. And I would love to be the first school bringing that out. And of course, with the generative design, I have particular interests that you'll see from my videos in the YouTube series, because there are quite a few. If you jumped into anywhere on here, you'd find very quickly. Just let me give it a second to load up. Oh, it's just frizzing out on me. I should be able to jump in there. Oh, it's strange it's doing that. Oh, I have to go to my channel. Basically, the playlists I keep kind of pared down to basics as they run through, and I delete them at times and leave the ones I think are most useful. But the videos are so random and chaotic in what I'm interested in, how I'm learning, from C# through to just jumping into courses I'm doing online through Future Learn, or I'm going into LinkedIn Learning and studying under Jeremy Graham, or all of a sudden I want to jump back into Daniel Kristev or look at the robotics of Carl Singline. Like there really isn't. There is sort of a method to here. This automobile series I did here, I absolutely took Ron Chang's Rhino textbook of how to build things, and he uses a bubble car off the start. So instead of making that in CAD and following through those exercises, I said, why not make it parametric and have a Grasshopper file that controlled it? It was one of the most insane, Grasshopper files that I threw together, and there was a lot of kind of dysfunction in that, and just a little too much information, too chaotic of script. So I take the research development, become creative with it, but when the creativity goes over the top and I start to lose interest in others, I kind of rein that back in. And it seems to me that just dealing in Grasshopper, that being able to program simply and know the basics of things like Python and maybe C#, you could really do a lot more with the base ribbon tools that come with Grasshopper, either Mac or Windows. And then you can start considering what kind of plugins exist for you, but also what kind of plugins don't exist for you. And can you start collaborating with individuals and thinking about what things don't really exist there? The one thing I will warn against all of this is, if you are a productive person, spend a life generating things and manufacturing things and making things and casting things, or making artwork and sculptures and jewelry and models, it's very hard to sit down and actually take the time to want to actually make any single iteration. You literally are entering a realm of algorithmic art. In a sense that I almost think we should change the name of sculpture at my school from sculpture to algorithmic art, from lace to cupcakes, because I think it's anywhere between anything computational, fabric oriented, all the way to culinary school of what maybe the outcome would be. And of course, in the same breath, that would extend from jewelry to architecture on all fronts. So there are plenty of videos to choose. They're all free. You can get lost in them. But if you want to start to kind of direct and push me and show me where the interest is, just jump onto that private group, GH Python Script, which is focused on the Python node. And then if you do take an interest in more one-on-one time and getting to know each other, and really trying to find the future of this and working together on it, I think the Patreon might be a very exciting space. And yeah, there's a half dozen people that have jumped on. I really appreciate their support. It certainly lets me know that I'm doing something that's somewhat useful out there in the world, instead of out in my backyard, what I'm working on. But that's a big rant. That's something I've been doing and starting to bring. And once again, I think my contemporary sculpture students, and I had a student respond and said, of course. It's when I said, you should have an online presence. You should have YouTube accounts. You should have meetups and Zooms that you look to weekly. 99% of the people seeing your work are never going to see it in person. They're going to see it digitally represented, or teleported around the world through digital media and G5 networks and things like that. So I think there's definitely the only way through this is, for me, the digital. And how we come out on the other side will probably not be a return to how we did things traditionally, but excuse me, definitely be finding a whole new way of speaking and seeing and helping and creatively working with architects, engineers, programmers, developers, engineers. I think I said that, and certainly artists. So thanks very much for watching. I don't know what I had on here initially. That's a little image, and there's something. Oh, I just popped that up. Pretty good example of what Hannah Fine's doing visiting out here. It's just a little image of me in front of one of my old towers, certainly on the phone with my headset, my game set, trying to have meetings about what the future of sculpture might be. But thanks very much for listening. I thought I'd just put everything in a nutshell, chaotically, and continue, because I'm into like 4 months of entering this realm. And I thank everybody for their support and interest, and I'll just keep going, keep going, keep going, like the Energizer Bunny Rabbit. Thanks for watching.